my man, Jeff Burton. I believe, actually, I know he is on. I just saw him a second ago. So Jeff Burton, he is the nation's top college placement advisor. If you're a ball player looking to get into play in college and find a good fit for you, Jeff is the best. So real quick, I think so he's helped over 500 players from all over the country help to go on and play college baseball. Such a cool thing what he does, and very important thing he does, especially nowadays with the transfer portal and the COVID years and all of that stuff. So he runs this company, Jeff Burton Consulting, and helps so many players who just navigate that process, and help so many players and parents and coaches as well. So Jeff is here. Let me share the screen here and see if I can pull him up. Jeff, are you unmuted? We good to go?
I'm good. Thanks, BG. How is everybody doing?
Awesome, man. Thank you, Jeff. How
Good.
you doing? Sorry to be running late here, but
Um, no worries. I think you were the one who taught me the importance of a good night's sleep, so I won't keep these guys up too late tonight.
yes, yes, so
And,
important.
and I want you to know I've got a lot of both inexpensive and expensive experiences in my life. So
Mm.
happy to share whatever with folks. So thanks everybody for being on. Brandon texted me a couple days ago and asked me if I'd be willing to come on and just share a little bit about what's happening in the world of recruiting right now. And I think your specific question for me, BG, was what are the two things that people ask you most often? And I think, and maybe what I'll start off by doing is just telling you guys what those two are. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. This is something that I've been doing for a long time. I had 58 kids commit last year to ACC schools, to SEC schools, to NESCAC schools, which are academic schools in the Northeast, to schools on the West Coast. I've got kids from China and I think 17 different states that I'm helping right now. So they're all over the place. And you can imagine that everybody has a different question, but the commonalities are involving timeline. When is it important? As I look around this group here, there are a lot of young guys on this group. I think there are maybe 12 of them though that I know pretty well and maybe even helping at this point in time. I would tell you guys that at some level, as parents, you need to kind of be able to look objectively at your own son or someone you're coaching and try to assess at what level you think they could potentially play. If they are an ACC or SEC caliber player, and I know everybody wants that caliber of player, but not everybody is BG or Brad Miller. I was an ACC player 35 years ago, but you didn't need to be BG or Brad Miller when you played at UVA 35 years ago. So if you are that level player, probably ninth grade is about when you need to start getting serious about this process. The NCAA has changed rules in the last year so that coaches cannot talk to nor start recruiting players until August 1st before their junior year. So you may say, well, why do we need to start in our freshman year? Well, you don't have to, but the reality is if you want to be ready to go on August 1st, when Monty Lee, the recruiting coordinator at South Carolina, is texting about 100 kids in the first 10 minutes after 12 a.m. on August 1st last year. That's what he did. I love Monty Lee. Nobody sleeps less than Monty Lee. But if you want to be ready to go, your son or daughter, if there are women's sports participants on this call, they need to know what they want. Do they want an SEC experience? Do they want an ACC experience? And you don't have to make a decision the moment a coach calls you, but you don't want to be that to be the time when you're just getting started. You want to take site visits with your kids. You want to go visit campuses. You want to get on and watch YouTube videos, maybe take a virtual tour. You want to study the roster and try to figure out if the coach is recruiting high school kids or is he recruiting out of the portal or how do they do it? Sometimes that's where folks need a consultant to come into their life to just help them navigate that. But if you're an ACC level player, I would say ninth grade is probably the year for that, for you to start thinking about that. Eighth grade used to happen. Kids make commitments in eighth grades pre-NCAA changes. I think that's a time, frankly, when kids still need to be having a ton of fun playing the game, maybe not thinking. I mean, they haven't even made their high school teams at that point in time, so it's probably a little premature. if you are what we would call a mid-major Division I player or a very high level Division II player, and again, if you are from the state of Virginia, let's say this is Georgetown, William and Mary, Davidson, Liberty, I think you can probably afford to wait almost another whole year till the summer before your junior year. If you wanted to start a little early, you could get away with it. But again, I think you want to let the Power 5 schools go ahead and grab who they're going to get. And so the Liberties and Davidsons and William and Marys of the world can then figure out where they're going to go. So, and then if you are a Division III or a JUCO player, you really don't need to start this process until about December 1st of your junior season, because most of that recruiting is going to happen in the summer after your junior year. So if you think in your child's life back to when they're going to get to those stages, and you can begin to watch what kids around you are doing, maybe go watch some college games, get a real objective feel for what it is that your kid may be capable of, that may help you put a little framework to the timeline. BJ, you think that helps? Or does that elicit any questions in your mind?
No, that's huge. The other thing was with the transfer portal and the extra year of COVID. How's that really impacting the high school baseball recruitment process?
Yeah, it's huge. I have been out of town the last 3 weeks. I spent a week in Florida at IMG, the aforementioned IMG, and down in Sarasota. 2 weeks ago, I was in Houston, Texas. Last week, I was in New Orleans and around in southern Louisiana. And I was talking to college coaches at every stop. I think it was the recruiting coordinator at Tulane, who said in this coming year, they have 15 high school players adding to their roster. Rosters right now have a cap of 40 players. So, 12 to 15 is about how many a coach would like to bring in a regular year. Tulane is bringing in 15 high school kids this year. He said going forward, they will take no more than 5 to 7 high school kids, because they can
What?
go out and get those kids out of the portal. And what generally happens is at Tulane, where it costs $80,000 to go to school, and nobody's going to get more than 50% of a scholarship in baseball. He said a graduate school at Tulane only costs $30,000. So kids can come there for much less money, and they get more of a known commodity. So this is the big shift. This happened at about the same time as COVID. So COVID, expanded rosters, transfer portal are often lumped in there together. What has happened, though, for the last couple of years, Division I baseball especially, but even some of the lower levels, has gotten older. And that's because more kids have been allowed to stay in the game longer, rather than going out and getting real jobs or playing pro ball. Those COVID years are coming to an end, right? Because you had to be in college during COVID to get the extra year of eligibility. But we are still left with a transfer portal that allows kids to move from school to school without having to sit out a year. When I played 35 years ago at UVA, had I wanted to transfer, I would have had to sit out 1 year. And if I had wanted to transfer from UVA to an ACC school, I would have had to transfer sit out 2 years. No longer do you have to sit out. So what I would say is you need to find a level at which you can go and contribute quickly. Because while you think you can go and sit the bench for a year or two and develop, most kids don't want to do that, and they're not willing to be patient. They will pull the trigger early and move to a new school. So coaches have now had several years of evidence about that, and what they're doing, rather than bringing a kid in trying to develop him over a couple of years, is they're letting his development happen somewhere else, and they're going and getting developed kids from other programs. So if you're Tulane, you can grab players from the Ivy League or Davidson or William and Mary to come in and play for you. If you're UVA, you can grab the Tulane players, right? Everybody's moving up one step in the process. I talked to the coaches at University of Houston and at Rice 2 weeks ago. I was in Florida and talked to Tampa and State College of Florida and Florida Southwestern. Everybody is doing this. Even NAIA schools in Southern Florida, their average age of their team right now is 22.5 years old, right? So older and older and older. You think your 17 or 18-year-old kid is going to go off and be fairly competing with their peers. They're not. They're competing with kids who are 4 or 5 years older than them. And the physical differences and the experience differences in those 4 or 5 years, they're just absolutely huge leaps. So the last thing I was going to say, BG, if you'll let me, is
Sure.
I tell kids all the time, and a lot of times I'm talking to parents first, but you are making 4 decisions when you start the recruiting process. Oftentimes people call me because they want to make an athletic decision, often about baseball, but our consulting firm helps in a sports way beyond baseball. We talk about that at some point if you want. But you are making an athletic decision, you are making an academic decision, you are making a social decision, and you are making a financial decision. Unlike basketball and football, baseball is a partially funded sport. So most kids are still paying significant dollars to go to school, and every school looks at aid, whether it's financial aid, needs-based, whether it's grants based on academic performance, or whether it is baseball money. They'll each look at those 3 things differently. Some schools, you can stack those things on top of each other, get a little bit of each of them, and get your final net cost to go to school down to a low level. But some schools, you're only allowed to pick one of those 3. So you need to know what the individual schools can do. And there are about 1,500 schools out there right now that play college baseball. So I would just say that it is the kid who generally is focused on one of those things. And again, normally we start our conversations around athletics. If you are solely focused on athletics, I think that there is about a 60% chance that you will end up in the transfer portal before your time is done. And that may not be a big deal, but I can promise you'd rather get it right the first time if you could. So think about academic fit, social fit, and financial fit along with academic, and I think you'll make a better decision. So,
Dude, that's huge. Those 4 things right there. I'm glad you brought them up. Because during that process, that just to really be intentional with making those decisions could be huge. Now a question in the chat, someone said, what's the best way to contact a college coach as a potential recruit? What would you say for that?
Yeah, so because college coaches cannot talk to you nor respond to you in a personal way until after August 1st of you going into your junior year, the best way to do that, well, I would say 3. Number 1, send them an email. You can grab their email address off their baseball website. And sometimes the head coach's address is not on there, but there often is a recruiting coordinator. Send him an email. Write a well-written email, 6 sentences or less. If it's too long, the coach will not read it. Okay, 6 sentences or less. Make sure it's well constructed.
It's huge
If
to
it's
know.
if it's a smaller school, most schools have what's called an online recruiting questionnaire. There is a link on their recruiting page that is right there on their baseball page. And if you click that link, it's typically a Google document, and you give them 6 to 10 pieces of information, and it populates into their recruiting system. You are now in that system. You're going to get invitations to camp. You're going to get information about their program. You may get a phone call from them on August 1st before your junior year. So recruiting questionnaires, especially at smaller schools, the Washington and Lees of the world, Hampton, Sydney's, Pomona, Swarthmore, Johns Hopkins, those kinds of places, recruiting questionnaires are really important. The third one is on-campus camps. Coaches today do much more recruiting online through video than they've ever done before, because video is so much better than it used to be. But there is no substitute for watching a kid play. And most hitting coaches at the collegiate level would like to see 25 at-bats on average before they would offer you an opportunity. And most pitching coaches want to see 6 outings before they would ever offer a kid. So if you go to a camp, a 2-day camp at the University of Virginia, the coach may see 15 at-bats over those 2 days. he gets a great idea for what kind of player you are, and he doesn't have to go to find you because you came to him. You made it really easy. And that is also called demonstrated interest. Coaches want to recruit players who really want to be at their schools. Showing demonstrated interest makes a big deal. So emails, online questionnaires, and going to camp.
Awesome. Awesome. Great, great information. Question, what do you think about post grad versus JUCO if you are young for your grad year? I know that post grad is getting big.
It's
What
get
are your
yeah, it's
thoughts
getting
on over that?
it's getting bigger. There are less opportunities for post grad than there are JUCO. I generally think the coaching is a little better at JUCO. That depending on where you live, I mean, there are good JUCO programs in the state of Virginia, but in the state of Florida or in the state of Texas, the JUCO programs are every bit the quality of a Division I mid-major program. They play 100 games a year because there's no limitations on how much they can play in the fall. They'll place you in summer collegiate baseball, and what coaches want, and go back to my question, my point about the transfer portal, they want kids who've proven that they can compete against other college players. So if you can
Mhm.
go to JUCO and compete against other college players and show success, you can leap from wherever you are to a next level player easier than by doing it at the post grad year, where you're really just playing against kids who oftentimes are young for their grade and wanted to hang on one more year to see if opportunity presents itself. Coaches can look beyond stats. They can even look beyond stature. We can look at a kid who's 5'10" and 160 pounds, and if he's twitchy and he's got great bat to ball skills, we know what kind of ball player that kid can become when he gets into a college weight room. If a kid is big early and has tons of success at the high school level, facing 82 to 84 mile per hour pitching, that tells a college coach very little, because that's not what you're going to face in college. So I would encourage you to get where you want to go quicker, sooner, rather than doing the post grad year. But that's a general rule, and each kid, has specific circumstances.
Great stuff. We got an
Yeah.
11-year-old softball player wants to
Yeah.
go play at Oklahoma State University. Wants to know how hard is it to get there. Do you do much with softball?
I actually have a softball person that's helping me. So yeah, we do a little
Oh,
bit with
awesome.
softball.
Yeah,
And we do basketball, we do football, we do men's and women's lacrosse, we do volleyball,
do
and
it
we do
all. I
soccer.
love it.
And we do soccer. I mean, and this has just happened, when we're helping as many people as we have for this many years, we get lots of questions. All of our clients come to us from other clients, right? We didn't even have a website until about a year ago, because we just didn't need it, right? And by the way, part of the reason that I do what I do, I manage money for college baseball coaches all around the country. So I have a competitive advantage over so many in the industry in terms of being able to reach coaches. They don't know whether I'm calling them to sell NVIDIA stock or whether I've got a hot young pitcher that's got capability of throwing 94 in the SEC. So competitive advantages. Yeah, softball actually starts a bit earlier than baseball, somewhat because, for the most part, young women mature, their bodies mature a little faster than do young men. So while the recruiting rules are still the same, I think most young women are ready to go compete at a showcase or at a college camp sooner than the average young man is. The average young man can't do much about changing his body until he hits puberty at 13. And so getting in the weight room to change your body at that point doesn't help a lot until you start going through puberty. At that point in time, I think you got to be heavy in the weight room. And it typically takes 2 or 3 years after that for most young men to kind of catch up to their bodies and learn how to play with this new body they've gotten. But with young women, it tends to happen sooner. And so I would say it doesn't need to happen at 11, but by 13 or 14, I would get in front of college softball coaches.
Okay, and is same transfer portal and everything for softball?
all exists. It's not quite as prevalent in softball as it is in baseball, but that's coming, right? And
Mhm.
at the Oklahoma State level, which is amongst the best in the country, it's happening. I mean, those coaches, they're if, you know, on a softball team, those coaches are going to build 50% of their team out of the portal and 50% out of the high school ranks. So again, you got to be good. And if you don't reach Oklahoma State right away, what I tell people is there are multiple paths to the same destination, right? You may
Mhm.
not be an Oklahoma State softball player or a UVA baseball player day one, but there are other routes to get there. UVA's
Mhm.
starting catcher right now looks like an All-American right now, played at Salisbury University on Maryland's Eastern Shore last year, right? So he never thought, he didn't get recruited out of high school. He never thought he'd play for a Power Five school that's number 10 in the country. And yet now he's not only playing, but he's having huge success
Yeah.
immediately at the highest level.
And you said earlier about you can go to a JUCO, play 100 games, get all those at bats, all that development. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that is absolutely huge. And then
But
you're proving to these coaches that you can play there. So you're going to have an advantage over a high school kid. So, like going to a JUCO or just a D2 or D3 or lower level D1 where you can play.
play.
Gosh, I can't, especially after hearing you. I thought it before, but especially after hearing you, man, that's the route. You know, it might not be, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
at the school of my dreams yet. Like that word I talked about
Yet.
earlier. You're
Yet.
not there
That's it. It's
yet,
a great word.
you
It's a
know?
great word. And, you know, as I talk to head coaches all the time, and these are the people that know the industry as well as anybody, most of them are prepared to send their own kids to JUCO baseball right now, right? They don't want to bring their own kids into their own programs and have them sit for 2 years. They're not going to get better, right? The coach at University of Tampa, Joe Urso, legendary coach down there. Tampa has both a varsity and a JV team. He brought his son in to be the starting D2, number one D2 in the country, starting shortstop. He was able to pick up a Florida State transfer shortstop that year. And he said to his son, I'm sending you down to the JV team to get 80 at bats. He did, had a great JV season, second year, played on the varsity, had a great year, transferred to a different Division I school. Don't quite, I think it was Stetson. This year is the starting shortstop at the University of Miami. So point
Wow.
is, he went from a JV at Tampa to the University of Miami in 4 years because he was willing to keep working and getting better. And that's the key. You don't get but so much better if you aren't on the field. Go to a level at which you can get on the field.
Yes, gosh, I cannot agree more. That's so
Yeah.
good. Is
Okay.
it true coaches look at parents for like behavior, commitment to the sport and pedigree when they're recruiting? Question in the
Um, it is unquestionably true. I could give you countless examples of kids, and again, because these coaches are my friends, they're my clients. I mean, I've had probably 10 SEC or ACC text going on while we've been on this webinar, not because it wasn't riveting. It was. I'm just trying to help place a kid right now.
Mhm.
And one of the questions they always ask is, tell me about the parents. What is the behavior like? Are they overbearing? Will they be patient while the development process happens? Because when they take your kid, they're taking your family. You become part of the family. And so parents, I would say that while you can take your kid places and he's going to need you to help pay bills, or she is going to need you to help pay bills, this is their experience, and let them have their own experiences. Be there for them, ask them how they're doing, check in on their mental health, but let them be players, release them to the game and to their coaches. And that includes even difficult circumstances. Let them work through playing time at the high school level or not playing the position that you think they ought to play. Most coaches are pretty competent. That's why they got their job. Not all are great, but they have a better sense than you do of how the team should be brought together, because they're with these kids at practice all the time. So parents, you can help your kid, but you can do more harm.
Yeah, you can help or hurt, right?
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
are PG and PBR showcases useful? Do college coaches look at those showcases? And I get, yeah, that's the full question.
They don't go to those showcases. College coaches need great video. So 15 years ago, when we didn't all have a fantastic iPhone in our hand all the time, things like PG and PBR were groundbreaking. They gave us a way to get verified metrics and great video to send to college coaches. Today, you can do all of that on your phone. I tell every kid that I work with, create a free YouTube page, populate it with the film that your parents grab on their cell phones during the game, populate it with what Game Changer or whatever streaming app your team uses, the highlights, put it on your YouTube page, and then grab a cell phone during practice and have someone video you taking 5 ground balls or throwing a bullpen or taking BP batting swings. Put those on your YouTube page, and you have just created a free way to transmit your video into the hands of a decision maker. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't go to showcases. You can. I think kids have to learn to play in front of eyes and in competitive situations. And oftentimes their high school or travel teams don't do that. So when you go to a PBR showcase and there's 50 shortstops lined up in a line, and you're getting ready to take 5 ground balls with 100 coaches with clipboards lining the edges at a head first or a show ball type showcase, that's pressure. And kids need to learn to play in that pressure. But coaches generally don't go to a PBR or PG showcase, and the rankings of those organizations don't matter either. They tend to overrank those kids who come often and pay a lot of money, or they will overrank you once you make a commitment to a school because they don't want to look foolish. But we tend to make too important those organizations. So if you take the bull by the horns and organize your own recruiting process, you don't need to spend the money that is demanded at those showcases.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I know we're at 9:45 here, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Are you fine with say two more, one more, two more?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm up. At this point in time, I'm awake and I'm fired up.
I know you had some rough travel
It
yesterday from New Orleans.
is not easy to get home from New Orleans, by the way.
Yeah, but hey, it sounded like you got that good nap in. Naps are powerful.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's right.
Okay, I appreciate it. So let me see a couple more here. If you send an email to a coach and you get no response within months, should you send a follow-up email or just let it be?
Absolutely. I tell my players, email them once a month. They will not be overwhelmed by your emails. In fact, they like persistence. So try to send them something new. If you email them in February with your high school schedule and some video, email them in March with some video of how things went the last month and maybe add your transcript in there. Email them in April and share your summer schedule with them and what showcases you will attend. At the end of emails, if you are of age, ask a question that elicits a response, right? Finish an email with a question. Hey, coach, what are the common characteristics of players who are successful in your program? Coaches love talking about their programs. A lot of their identity is wrapped up in their program. So ask them a question that will elicit a response. Now, again, until you are August 1st before your junior year, the coach cannot respond to you other than sending you a passive camp invitation. Once you are at camp, he can talk to you. He's not supposed to talk to you about recruiting, but it doesn't mean you can't be building rapport with a coach. I had a kid today ask Auburn on a kid from Houston, Texas, asked the coach at Auburn why he was such a great hitter in baseball, but can't hit a golf ball very far, right? I mean, and the reality was I was just trying to get them talking about something that would be fun, right?
Yeah.
Or what ingredients he liked to put in his smoothie. Again, we're just trying to create rapport so that coach wants to spend more time with you. So consistent emails are a big deal.
Great. So ask a question that elicits a response. Keep it short. You said what, six
sentences or less.
Be persistent, have great rapport. That kind of answers another question in there. How to get their attention. I feel like when you're at an event, probably go up and speak to them and everything. Real
Yeah,
quick,
yeah, and
last one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say when you're at an event too, remember that you control your own narrative. Okay, if you are a gritty player and you want to be seen as a gritty player, you better put your face in there when a ball bounces, a throw down from second or from the catcher to second. You're playing shortstop. Get your face in there and be willing to absorb contact. Dive for balls, slide, take extra bases. You control your narrative. I've had coaches say before when kids show up in really tight baseball pants and what are those cool wraparound sunglasses that everybody's using these days? That are what are they? BG, you
Are
would wear
they
them because you have all the great swag.
100%? I don't know. I'm not
Maybe they
sure.
are, but
Yeah.
I got a call from East Carolina, and one day when a kid that I was sending down there, and the coach said he just showed up and he was a bit flashy for the kinds of kids that tend to be successful at East Carolina. Talked about his tight pants and his sunglasses, and again, that's the narrative that the kid was portraying, and the coach was looking for something else. So again,
Mm.
be who you want to be, and if you really want to play at a particular school, you may want to do a little homework on what kind of identity it is
Mm.
that those coaches are after. But you ultimately want to be authentic too, right? So
Sure.
again, if somebody really wants blue collar and you like flashy, well, maybe you need to find a different school. So what was the other question you were going to ask, BG?
Yeah. This is kind of in line with what I like to hear of those who play more than one sport. So do recruiters look at players that can play more than one sport in baseball? I know when I got recruited
Yeah.
to UVA, Coach Mack there loves those two sport guys. But
Yeah, he
from what
does.
you see in other with other
Yeah.
programs, do a lot of them like that? Because I know so many players can specialize in one sport nowadays early.
Yep.
With my
Yeah.
three young kids, I am being very intentional where I'm letting them play whatever they want and I don't want to specialize at all. I want to have them
Yeah.
do jujitsu, do all this other stuff
Yep.
to increase athleticism, not get burnout. But
Yep.
would you agree with that approach? And do
Oh yeah.
coaches like that approach?
Yeah. You know what coaches want? They want winners, guys who can help them keep their jobs. So you've got to be able to play the game for which you are being recruited. But they also want athletes. There are some players that are such good athletes. And BG, you were one of these. You mentioned Kyle Teal earlier. Like Kyle Teal could have played shortstop for UVA, and I could totally have seen him playing point guard or running back on a football team, right? I think Kyle Teal was so good he probably needed a week or two to get his timing at the beginning of the year, but he could have played football and basketball and still been ready for baseball season and been the best guy on the field, right? There's a
Mhm.
reason why you don't see a lot of multi-sport athletes at the college level because it's really hard. But 7% of high school players go on to play college baseball. Let me repeat that. 7% go on to play college baseball.
And that's
So
all
the
levels.
at all levels. So when you look at a high school team with 20 players on the team, between one and two of those players historically are going to go off to play any level of college baseball. Now, if you go to some schools, it seems like everybody goes. Other schools, nobody goes, but the average is 7%. And so point is, it is only the elite of the elite that are going to get a chance to go play at the highest levels. And those athletes are good enough to play multiple sports. If you are a
Mhm.
guy who is going to work really, really hard to catch on at a Division III or a lower level JUCO program, those extra months by skipping basketball season may be the difference in how you get started in the season or whether you put on enough weight in the weight room, because basketball, you'll run the weight off that you are so trying desperately to put on. So you've got to know yourself and know what level you are. But it is so true that the UVA Brian O'Connors and Kevin McMullins of the world, they want grit and toughness and competitiveness and athleticism, and they believe in cross-training that. I've actually known some players who have committed to UVA to play baseball. In so doing, they wanted to not play sports that they had played prior to their commitment. And UVA has told them that if you stop playing football, we will rescind our offer to you. That's how important
Really?
they think that is.
Wow. How
Yes.
about that?
Call Mac about that if you want to. He will give you names. So anyway,
Wow.
I think
Wow.
multi-sport training, especially in these younger years, is vital. And by the way, just to not burn your kid out either, I think is really
Yeah.
important.
So you're not severely limiting their odds of playing at the next level. If you play fall, you don't do travel ball, baseball, you do football, and then just play spring baseball. Like you don't think it just comes back to, are you a winner? Are you gritty? Are you an athlete? That kind of stuff.
And are you good enough to help a coach win? Right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
ultimately how it happens. If you need those extra months, maybe need to not play one of the 3 sports seasons so that you can double up on baseball. But there is no coach that cares what you do in the 8th grade. None. That's why I say it just doesn't matter what you do before then. It used to be that you'd see a fantastic athlete commit to a Mississippi State in the 8th grade. That's not happening anymore. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
you can't catch their eye, but they don't care if you can hit a 68-mile-an-hour fastball. It just doesn't matter. 87 or above, that's generally the marker. If you can hit 84-mile-an-hour pitching, great. They may learn some other things about you, but they can't tell if you're going to hit college pitching.
Mhm.
87 and above is generally the number that they want to use as a marker as to whether or not you're going to be able to compete against college pitchers.
Got it. Dude, what you just said, I that needs to be said to just like in the travel league I'm at right now with 8 years,
Yeah, yeah.
some of the parents and coaches who are like all in. Like in my mind, I'm like, man, high school coaches, they don't care your son's 7 or 8 years old. They don't care how
No,
they obviously,
no.
at school he's doing good, but
Yeah,
it's not the
yeah.
end all be all right nowadays. The coach will never
I
ask
yeah.
you how you did when your son was 8.
I wrote down here just something to say, and I don't remember if I've said it yet, but I wanted parents on the call to say to their kids, you are so much more than a baseball player. You
Hmm.
are. And so often we find our value in something early in life. And I do think identifying with something for young people is extremely important. So if it can be identification as a ball player, great. That gives them something to hold on to as they create their identity. But as they create wisdom in their lives, parents are going to see their kids are so much more than ball players. They already know that, but they don't all act like that. And I didn't always act like that either, right? So I want them to be curious and to find out, do I love science, or do I love finance, or do I love nature, or do I like cities? What do I like? Because ultimately, if you can figure out what is unique about you and where your identity is, not only will you find a great baseball fit, but you'll find a great fit in all these other areas that I said was important too. So parents,
Yeah.
just remember your kids are more than just baseball players.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. I don't know if you called earlier where, man, if I could tell my younger self what I would have trained and worked on more is having an
Yeah,
identity as a
yeah,
person on and
yeah,
off the field. And you bringing that up made me think of this. It's one of the worksheets in the MLM workbook. It's I think it's the most important exercise we go over. What is
yeah.
your identity on and off the field? So we're not
Yep,
tying all of our self-worth to who we are as a player. So they create an identity and they name it. This is an
yeah,
example of a player on and off the field, the top
yep,
qualities they embody when they are living in integrity with that identity. And then most importantly, what are the behaviors that lead to that best version of you showing up? So
yep,
letting the identity drive the show, lead to powerful behaviors, and then the feelings of well-being, of happiness, of confidence lead to the results, right? But it all
yeah.
starts with this turning one off, turning the other on. I'd say change clothes, change identities when we're at the
Love
field.
it,
So, dude, thank you
love
for
it,
bringing
love
that
it,
up. We could
love
talk
it.
about that all. The identity part, gosh, it is
Yeah.
so important. So important.
Love it. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer. Jeff Burton Consulting is the website. I'll throw my email in the chat here if anybody needs it. I'm always happy to answer questions. Um, just really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, dude, Jeff, real quick, do you have
Yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, direct message. Do you think having personal baseball videos on social media is good for committing to colleges? I can't remember if you hit on that earlier, but is that
I
something
didn't.
college
I
coaches like?
didn't. Yeah. So I tell kids again, when you are posting video that looks like a college player, it is probably worthwhile. I tell players doing it more than about once every other week looks like self promotion, and I don't love that. There is a part of self promotion in the recruiting process. And I will say that for most players, this is the most uncomfortable part about recruiting is talking about yourself, promoting yourself. We'll do it in the locker room. We'll do it in the dugout. We'll do it when we're amongst friends, but to do it with people that hold our futures in their hands, that can be very difficult. So I do think coaches don't use Instagram. They don't use Snapchat. They don't use Facebook. Today, they use Twitter, or what used to be called Twitter X. And so putting a video out of something that shows a skill that coaches look for is valuable. Tagging specific coaches is a no-no. If you tag the UVA coaches because you want the UVA coaches to see it, well, what happens if UVA doesn't like you and Virginia Tech wants to see you and they say, well, why didn't he tag me? So I tell kids, tag your high school program, tag your travel ball program. If you work with someone like me, tag me or tag BG. We'll retweet it, and enough coaches follow us that they will see your video, but don't tag individual coaches, and don't put video from 200 feet away onto a screen. It just doesn't help. You need to have someone or your parents with some skills kind of getting up against a screen and actually getting worthwhile video that we can see something. So that's a great question though.
Got it.
So,
Dude,
okay.
so much, we could be here all night. I feel like asking you questions.
Yeah.
So much
Oh,
valuable
that's all right.
information, Jeff. So thank you. Anyone who
Anytime.
has more questions, whether, like I said, we maxed out earlier, we couldn't get, so a lot of people will be watching us on the recording. So jeffburtonconsulting.com, and then you put your email address in the chat,
Yeah, that's right.
burton.jeff15@gmail.com. If anyone has
That's
any
right.
more questions or wants to talk to him about anything. So Jeff,
Yeah,
thank you, my
absolutely.
man.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Great to hear from
You too.
you.
You
So,
too.
so valuable. So we'll talk here soon, man.
Good luck to you all. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, man. Talk soon, brother.